Several hours later, Lu Sheng boarded the plane with Qin Huihu and they both began heading towards the front line. Along the way, he explained to Lu Sheng that once he joined the Eastern Military District, his superiors would probably immediately grant him the rank of Brigadier General. At that point, he would be able to have more contact with the undergrounds. In fact, they had spent most of their time in the outer zone, so their knowledge of the interior of the undergrounds was limited. Upon hearing this, many questions came to Lu Sheng's mind. He asked Qin Huihu if this meant that his development path would be different from theirs. Qin Huihu closed his eyes, extended his hand to the side, and with a pleasant smile explained that as a 7th level master in the army, this meant being a star. Stars had their own hierarchies and battlefields. Star-level masters generally operated in small teams, carrying out group missions. If one had exceptional talent in military affairs, they could even follow the path of becoming a corps commander. Lu Sheng simply began to look at Qin Huihu and remained silent, listening attentively without saying a word. Qin Huihu opened his eyes, placed his hand under his chin, and with a serious look, started staring at Lu Sheng and explained that recently, several SS ranked undergrounds had experienced repeated outbreaks of mutant beasts. It was suspected that there was a tendency to evolve towards SS rank. He had faith that perhaps Lu Sheng could have the opportunity to confront these beasts. Upon hearing this, Lu Sheng was somewhat surprised, with a look of terror on his face. He began to look towards the ground and thought that a SS underground facility was too far-fetched and unrealistic for him at this moment. While they were conversing, the pilot informed them that there were problems. Yu Shizuo's defense line was being attacked by a 7th level mutant beast, and they were requesting reinforcements. Upon hearing the pilot's voice, Lu Sheng, who had his hands in his pants pockets, and Qin Huihu turned their heads towards him. Seeing that the mutant beast was of level 7, Lu Sheng began to look at the pilot and thought that this could be a good opportunity. While he had his hands in his pants pockets, he turned his body towards Qin Huihu and asked if Yu Shizuo was very far from here. Qin Huihu dropped his arms, turned his head towards Lu Sheng, and with a surprised look replied that no, adding that Yu Shizuo was very close. They could reach him in about 3 minutes. At that moment, he realized what Lu Sheng was planning to do and was shocked. He started looking at Lu Sheng and asked him if he was planning to go alone. Lu Sheng pressed the button to open the airplane door. While slowly the door was opening, he replied yes, explaining that his help could be of use to Yu Shizuo. After saying this, he asked him to bring him a pair of shoes. Several seconds later, the airplane door opened completely and air started to enter the interior. Qin Huihu took a few steps back and couldn't help but be shocked and feel fear. Lu Sheng simply approached the door, looked down, and with a smile asked him to bring the highest quality shoes. On the battlefield half an hour ago, several powerful mutant beasts emerged and began advancing quickly towards the soldiers. Just before the mutant beasts could attack, someone appeared and in the blink of an eye, defeated them. This person was none other than Yu, who had defeated the monsters using a sword. As the pieces of the mutant beast slowly fell to the ground, with a furious look, Yu began to stare at them intently, clenched his teeth tightly and told the soldiers that this was the last beast. Upon seeing this, the soldiers couldn't help but feel happy, as with Yu here, they were going to win. One of the soldiers who was holding a bottle of water with both hands approached Yu, started looking into his eyes, and with a grateful look, addressed him as master and praised him for doing a good job. As a token of gratitude, he offered him to take a sip of water. Yu, who was still on alert in case more mutant beasts appeared, turned his head towards the soldier and was somewhat surprised. Without hesitation for a second, he took the bottle of water and thanked the soldier. He lifted the bottle, closed his eyes, opened his mouth, and started drinking water. He asked the soldier if their reinforcements had arrived. He didn't know what was happening with the increase in personnel in the Star Combat Team. To deal with these mutant beasts, they needed elite forces. The soldier, who was somewhat terrified, explained to Yu that the army had asked them to hold on a little longer, maximum 2 days, and then the Star Combat Team would arrive to provide support. Upon hearing this, Yu couldn't help but get angry. He forcefully threw the water bottle to the ground and with an aggressive look, he started staring at the floor and couldn't help but wonder how the army was asking them to hold on for 2 whole days. He explained to the soldier that now they were only facing 5th and 6th level mutant beasts. The defense was made up of fighters of medium level, which was barely enough. He knew that if 7th or even 8th level beasts arrived, they would no longer be able to handle them. Upon hearing this, the soldier became somewhat nervous, started looking at Yu and thought that he was right. At the same time, someone appeared and delivered a strong kick to a mutant beast's face. This person was none other than Qin. Gaining momentum, he took a big leap, clenched his fist tightly with one hand, extended the other to the side, and while his body was surrounded by powerful energy, he began staring at the beast and gave it a strong kick. Another flying beast that was near the area tried to attack Chin, who had his guard down. But at that moment, someone extended their hand towards it, and in the blink of an eye, a blue aura appeared around its body and paralyzed it in midair. Then several kunais made of spiritual energy appeared around it. This person was none other than Snowy. She turned her back to the mutant beast and with a piercing gaze, snapped her fingers, causing the kunais made of spiritual energy to attack it, cutting its body into pieces. After defeating the monster, she crossed her arms and began walking towards you. Several seconds later, Chin landed on the ground. While having one knee and one hand supported on the ground, he turned his head towards her, and as he watched her slowly moving away, he simply started to smile. Upon seeing that they had defeated the mutant beasts with great ease, the soldiers around them began to cheer them on. Chin stood up, dropped his arms to his sides, and started walking alongside Snowy. Several seconds later, they reached Yu. Upon seeing him, Chin closed his eyes and greeted him with a smile. Snowy, who had her arms crossed, also started smiling and greeted him. Yu extended his hands to the sides and couldn't help but feel happy. He explained to them that these days they had relied heavily on both of them. He also added that otherwise, they wouldn't have been able to endure being alone for so long. Chin closed his eyes, started touching his head, and told Yu that there was no need to thank him since it was their duty. Yu approached them, closed his eyes, and the three of them began to converse. While they were talking, two soldiers who were near the area approached them. One of them turned his head towards them and with a smile told his friend that Chin and Snowy were only 40 years old and had already reached the pinnacle of the 6th level. With them here, it was possible for their division to produce 2 more 7th level Stellar Masters, which would give everyone much more security. The other soldier started looking at his friend and replied that so far, Yu had been handling all the mutant beasts of the 6th level. He also added that they, as soldiers, could deal with some smaller beasts. Snowy, who had her arms crossed, began to look at Yu and calmly explained to him that she had just heard that they had to endure 2 more days. She also added that with this situation, they should be able to endure since after all, this wave of mutant beasts was already over. Yu also crossed his arms and replied that this was true. He supposed the next wave would come tomorrow in the dungeon. At that moment, the ground began to shake, and upon seeing this, Chin and Snowy started looking around and couldn't help but wonder what was happening. Several seconds later, the ground started shaking even stronger, causing Yu, Snowy, and Chin to extend their hands to the sides in order to maintain balance. With a surprised look, Yu began to gaze at the ground and also started wondering what was happening. He couldn't help but sweat and panic. Slowly he began to turn his head back, and with a terrified look he thought that this was not good. The tremors had created a small crack in the ground. Yu knew perfectly well that the epicenter of this tremor came from underground. The small crack in the ground transformed into a gigantic hole which slowly began to break apart, causing the ground to fall inward. At that moment, a mutant beast in the shape of a centipede emerged from the hole, and several seconds later, a clawed beast also emerged. The tremors were being caused by these mutant beasts. In the blink of an eye, 3 beasts emerged from the ground, one shaped like a gorilla, another like a centipede, and another like a praying mantis. The beasts gained momentum and with a murderous look, began to advance quickly towards them. These were 3 7th level mutant beasts. Chin turned his head to the side and upon seeing the mutant beasts, he panicked and clenched his teeth tightly. In a matter of seconds, fear took hold of him. He couldn't help but wonder if this was real and how they were supposed to survive this. Snowy began to look at the beasts, and far from feeling fear, she couldn't help but become enraged. Just when they were starting to lift their spirits a little, these mutant beasts had appeared. She thought that now everyone's morale would be completely extinguished. Yu began to stare fixedly at the beasts, clenched his teeth tightly, and thought that if it were only one beast, he could cooperate with the school officials to defeat it gradually. He remembered that 7th level mutant beasts would explode their bodies before dying, which could cause great damage to the soldiers. The 3 mutant beasts approached them and stood right in front of Yu. He unsheathed his sword and started looking at the beasts. He didn't know how he was going to face 3 mutant beasts at once, nor did he know if he might die here. He grabbed the sword's handle with both hands, causing his body to emit a powerful red energy. He was not willing to give up without fighting. He brought the sword close to his face, started looking at the beasts, and with a determined gaze, he asked the others not to overthink it. He advised them to simply focus on shooting. He told them that if they wanted to survive, then they had to fight with everything they had to attack at any cost. they had to keep attacking forward. After saying this, he asked all martial artists of level 6 or higher to prepare themselves and follow him at the front. At that moment, 3 martial artists took a step forward, unsheathed their swords, and began to approach Yu. Snowy and Chin stood behind Yu, who tightly gripped the sword, assumed an offensive stance, started looking at the mutant beasts, and told the others that the goal was to defeat this 7th level mutant beast with 3 heads. Upon hearing Yu's order, the tanks began to shoot at the mutant beasts. The gorilla-shaped beast started covering its head with its hand, while on the other side, the centipede-shaped beast became enraged and stared directly at Yu. Chin started bleeding from his mouth, quickly placing his hand over it, closing his eyes, and coughing. Several seconds later, he moved his hand away from his mouth, and upon seeing that his palm was full of blood, he couldn't help but regret. He began to examine his palm and thought that if he had known they were going to have to fight against 3 level 7 beasts, he wouldn't have been so aggressive before. Snowy simply started looking at the ground and remained silent. While Chin was looking at his hand, he turned his head towards her, and upon seeing that she was silent, he became somewhat confused. Snowy had red eyes. Chin approached her, and upon seeing that her eyes were as small as a rabbit's, he asked if she had been bitten by an insect. While she was looking at the mutant beasts, with a calm voice she asked Chin to go to hell. She had just gotten a little mentally tired. She also asked him if he couldn't see that he was also hurt. Chin started wiping the blood from his mouth using his finger, and with a smile, he asked her not to get angry and not take it so seriously since this was just a joke. He also asked her if Lu Sheng hadn't said that he would come these days. After wiping his mouth, Chin began to look down at the ground, and with a sad look he asked her what would happen if, when Lu Sheng came to find them in the military district of the east, he found 2 corpses instead of them. He asked her if Lu Sheng wouldn't be instantly perplexed. Upon hearing this, Snowy started looking down at the ground too. She asked Chin to be quiet since every word he was saying decreased their chances of survival. Chin lifted his head and, with a determined look, decided to listen to her and stay quiet. Several seconds later, Snowy, Chin, and several martial artists began following Yu. While Chin was wiping his mouth with his hand, he started looking at the beasts, and told Snowy that he wasn't willing to die. She simply started looking at the beasts and remained silent. At that moment, Yu caught everyone's attention, and with a serious look, he asked them to prepare for battle. While his body was surrounded by powerful energy, he raised his sword towards the sky. Seeing this, the others also unsheathed their swords and raised them towards the sky. Then, he gave the order for everyone to attack. At that moment, a shooting star covered in golden energy passed through the sky. Upon seeing this, everyone began to look up at the sky and became somewhat confused and surprised at the same time. None of them knew what it was. Upon hearing others, Chin and Snowy raised their heads towards the sky and realized that it wasn't a shooting star but rather a person. Upon looking more closely, she realized that this person was Lu Sheng. She began to look at him with a gaze full of love and couldn't help but blush. Several seconds later, Lu Sheng started landing. Upon seeing this, Snowy clenched her fist tightly and explained to Yu that this wasn't good because the place where he was going to land was where the 3 7th level mutant beasts were. She thought that Lu Sheng was in danger. While Lu Sheng was gradually landing, Chin, who didn't know that this person was Lu Sheng, started looking at him and asked her who this idiot was and if she knew him. Yu simply clenched her fists tightly and silently watched Lu Sheng. Several seconds later, Lu Sheng began to descend towards the mutant beast, who quickly opened its mouth to devour him. As his body was surrounded by golden energy, he started looking at the mutant beast and couldn't help but smile. Lu Sheng's body hit the mouth of the mutant beast, causing its body to impact against the ground, breaking part of the floor into pieces and the teeth of the mutant beast in the process. Seeing this, Yu and the others were left speechless and began to wonder what was happening. Several seconds later, the corpse of the mutant beast could be seen lying on the ground. Lu Sheng had attacked it with such force that now half of its mouth was split in 2. In the middle of its mouth, there was a curtain of smoke. Once the smoke began to dissipate, Lu Sheng took a step forward. As his body was surrounded by a powerful and suffocating golden energy, he clenched his fists tightly and started looking towards the ground with a smile, thinking that the quality of army boots wasn't bad. This is the end of the video. If you guys want to see the next part, then don't forget to subscribe and like the video.